Hello everyone, this is Brendan Bryan from Team 24/7, and this is my individual progress for sprints 3 and 5. For sprint 3, my user story was, as a player I want to use items and equip them from my inventory so that I can take advantage of their effects. So I'm going to show you a sequence diagram that I created to show the implementation. This is the best diagram because there's mostly functions and no major design patterns for the structure of my implementation. Basically, it starts out on the map class. There is a move player function that takes a direction from the interface based on what the player chooses as the direction. The move player function decides where the next move will be, and if the player is standing on an item, then it will add to inventory, passing the object, which is the item, to the inventory. The add to inventory function will return a boolean, true or false. It will return true if the item was added to the inventory, and false if the inventory is currently full. So this sequence diagram is based on one case, and there are different options in the inventory. In this case, the player has picked up an item. The function add to inventory has returned true, and the player has chosen to look at the stats. The stats is passed from the player to the inventory, and the inventory decides to get the stats from the item, and the getStats function goes from the item and returns a string of the item's stats. The player then decides to equip the item with the equip function in the inventory. It goes from the inventory to the item. It passes the position of the item from the inventory so it knows which item to equip, and then it returns the weapon, since in this case it's a weapon, but there are other possibilities as well. And it returns the weapon to the player, and the player has equipped that weapon. So other possibilities in the inventory fragment are using a weapon, which is only for consumables, equipping, in this case, which the player does, stats, which looks at usually a stat like health or strength bonuses that the player can receive, and then the player also has the option to drop the weapon. For Sprint 4, my user story was, as a player, I want some levels to have a boss enemy so that I have a challenge to look forward to. For this user story, I went from items to working on enemies, and there was already a basic hierarchy for the enemies, so I'm only going to include stuff that's relevant to what I worked on. The base object superclass has a child, which is actor. The base object basically gives the actor an X and Y location and an icon and basic object attributes. The actor then contains all of the attributes that the player, enemy, and boss will inherit, which is all of the stats like the strength, the health, constitution, and all of the stats that determine how the player and enemy react to each other. So the enemy and boss are nearly identical. I decided to create another class because the boss class did not exist, and the only thing that's different is really the icon. The enemy, or the boss enemy, looks a little bit scarier than the regular enemy, and we added abilities to the boss as well. For Sprint 5, my user story was, as a player, I want additional armor so that the game is more interesting. For this one, there was not a whole lot to create a diagram for. There was really only one function, and the function basically randomizes the locations of items, and the algorithm also checks to see what class the player is and chooses all of the items that are put on the map based on the player's class. And there are 3 different arrays to choose from, one for the warrior, one for the mage, and one for the rogue. So it randomizes the locations, and it also randomizes the strength for the weapons and constitution, or how much health bonus you get for armor. And then it adds the items to the map. There is a constant amount of items, so each level after the first level will generate 5 items at this point. And that's about it for this user story. It wasn't very structured. It was pretty much just a function. And that will conclude my sprints for my individual progress. And thanks for watching.